Well, my motivation was this. I had, I was under a ministry in Wilmington, Delaware, on 8800 East 13th Street, Mount Zion Miracle Station. I had been in Sharon Temple SDA Church, before that, and I went with a pastor that needed help, and I became with that. And so, make a long story short, after a while, they moved the pastor down to Maryland, and I was in prayer. We were coming. We had a prayer meeting because there was some things going on, and they wanted to see if they want to, allow the church to continue because it wasn't really a Adventist church at the time. It was a company. Because before they let you become a church, you have to be called a company. So he was moved to Mitchellville, Maryland, and I was in there. And we had a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. prayer line. 1 hour, everybody came to church. We were praying for some understanding about things, how to go forward, blah, 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 Z, blah, blah, A to Z. And, Lorraine and I were the last ones in the church at 6 p.m. There was a meeting from the elders up in Pine Forge who were going to see about, connecting the money and everything else to help the church continue. And when I was on my face, I laid in on 11 or 6 o'clock. Everybody was in 1 hour. Everybody came. Different people came for that whole day. And at 6 o'clock was the last hour. And my wife and I were in there praying. She was in the first pulpit, and I was laid out prostrate on the pulpit, across the pulpit on the floor. And I saw in a vision, I heard, he said, get up and get ready to go. I heard the voice tell me, get ready to leave. So I put on my shoes and went back outside, and I was walking around, where am I going? He said, go back in. I said, it's time to go. So I went back in and laid back down on my face. I looked up, and there were chains on the door in my vision. So I got up and I told Lorraine, come on, there you go. This ain't going to work. We got to start our own ministry. So Lorraine is very meticulous and particular about what she does things. The first it comes to God's work. So she told me, okay, I'm with you. So I said for us to start a ministry. So we basically got home, and for 6 months I was in a cocoon. I didn't do anything. I just was going from to Pine Forge. I was going to Bennettsville, Pennsylvania. I was going down to First Church in Philly. I was going down to Salisbury Church in Salisbury. Was traveling over Vineland, just traveling, trying to get. And he kept telling me look for a building. I wouldn't look for a building. There was a lot of fear in me because of the fact that when they tell you when you step away from that type of doctrine, they call you a shepherd's rod. But I was, after what am I going to do? How am I going to do this and that? So let me push forward. So from that point on, Lorraine and I, I told us I got to start a church. So 6 months later, I told the pastor who, when I got ready to leave that ministry, that it was going to shut down. He told me I was being high-minded. I was, I was a little, take heed lest I fall. I said, I'm telling you, it's not going to work. I saw chains on the door. So, he told me he was a new pastor, young pastor. And he told me I was, I guess, basically tripping. But anyway, about when I left, my wife and I left because all the people knew, they knew me because the pastor had left, and they knew me as I was the one who was basically running the show for that church at the time. But they brought in a new pastor, fresh from out of college, who didn't understand. We used the name Yahweh and Yahshua. We prostrated, we prophesied, and he cut all that off. So the Lord prepared him to move me. So finally, when I got ready to, I was in the house and I began to prepare. The Lord, he told me, he called me and said, oh, well, by the way, let me tell you, Elder Mitchell, the church has been closed. So I said, okay. So he said, the environmental agency found this toxic stuff underneath the building. I said, I didn't tell you how I was going to shut down. I just told you it was going to close. So, from then on, the next event was, Dave was born July 1st, 95. Next door to us in our condos over on 120 Stonebridge, over there by Walmart, and back at Walmart on 70, on 40, and, 40 and 13. Right there, we lived in those condos. But anyway, to make a long story short, the Lord had told me, there was a day, and this lady named Bernice Murray, she was in charge of Salvation Army. She was director. She was next door, lived right around the corner from us, and she came to our house and bought my wife and I robes, and bought pampers for the child when he was born, and she asked me, I started giving her word from the Lord. So she said, would you come next door and talk to my husband? So I went around the corner to her husband, name was Dennis, and I said, you got a back problem? And he's like, oh yeah. I said, let me pray. He's, oh no, don't touch my back. I'm in a lawsuit. So I left him alone. But then from there, she said, I have a friend I want you to talk to. Would you meet me? I said, surely. So she said, her name is Mary, and I can bring her by tomorrow. So the next day, when I was expecting her to come by, nobody came. And Sister Mother Bernice called me and said, well, you won't believe this, but she had 4 flat tires on her car. So I'm like, okay. So the next day we came, and before they came, I went upstairs and I was laying on my face. And I saw a young lady with two little boys, one boy, one father on one side and one father on the other, and it was Sister Justice's. It was her daughter. So I saw she was thin and stuff, and the Lord showed me something. So when my bell rang, I went downstairs, and Sister Justice was with Mother Bernice. She jumped back as soon as she saw me. She said, "Oh my God!" I said, "Excuse me, what's the matter?" She said, "I know you." I said, "Well, she said, "No, I know you in the spirit. I know who you are." She said, "Well, come on in." And so she started talking to me. I said, "Wait. Before I said, "You got a daughter, don't you?" She said, "Yes." I said, "You got a daughter, and she has two different sons by two different men." Right. So I said, "And there's been something going on with your daughter down wherever you're going. You're going to go get her." She said, "I just got my daughter back from Florida, and you're right. She has two sons, and they're by two different men." See, everything you're telling me, I'm going to detail. She said, "You're dead on right." She said, "Where's your church at?" I said, "I don't have a building." The Lord told me. She said, "Well, listen here. You start right here in your house, and we'll come." So that's how, it basically God moved me into that position. And next Sabbath, they came, Sister Justice and Angel, her son Angel, Angie, her nephew Sam. Then Sister Bernice came with her two sons, Michael and her son, who's an apostle now. They came over, and that's how it started. It started from there, and then after that, Angel told your father John about it, and first Tyrone came. Then he's my assistant, your uncle Tyrone, and basically he left, and then John showed up with Angel, and then from then on, I started giving studies, to them, and John was going back to school in Barton College. Then the next time I know he shows up in the summer, he shows up with your mom, Naila. And as soon as I saw her in the service, I said, "That's your wife." He said, "Well, I can't marry her because we're unequally yoked. She's a Muslim." I said, "Well, God's going to change it." So we began doing studies at Amazing Facts. We go to Pastor Judy's house. We come to my house. We went and started studying. And before they were going back to college, it was amazing because I said, "John, that's your wife." He said, "Oh, Pop, I said, "Don't worry. She's going to come to the Lord. You gonna call me this Friday?" And it was he left that Sunday. She gonna come in and told me she was so Friday. Sure enough, that evening, John come. He said, "Pastor Mitchell." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You ain't gonna believe this, but Naila just received Christ." So I started start laughing at myself. But see, everything began to form from there. Then from there, our mom Cindy came, and started doing music for us. Then my mom Jerby came and left Seventh Day Baptist Church around the corner from her and came on board. So everything began to form in that way. It was like, all of a sudden, then people started coming from different areas. People who were Sabbath keepers, who were not, I guess, satisfied. Some were not satisfied with the ministry they were in. They would come and visit. And God began to send people in from First Day, everything else, and it just blew up. When I was given, the apostolic was on me, I didn't understand it. I was talking about, I thought only the 12 that died out, the 12 apostles with Yeshua were the ones. But then I began to hear that, I was an apostle. So for about a year, I was, as I was training your father, because what happened with him when he came through my door, there was something about him. And I had Sister Justice was supposed to be my assistant to me, but when he came to the door, the Lord said, "He's the one." I heard it clear, like I heard like a bell. As I told him after service, I said, "Listen, the Lord told me you're the one going to pastor these people." And he said, "I'm okay. I'll whatever you want me to help you with, I will." So began to teach him and train him like that. But when the transition was, in 99, going into 2000, we went down. We were going downstate. My wife and I were looking in Lower Delaware off 13, way down there, about an hour from where we were at. I forgot the name of the city. But anyway, we went in there. We found a house we were going to try to rent out. We had a nice house on Harrison Street. But, we going to move. Yeah, the Lord said fair to move. So I'm going to try to move downstate versus not moving at all, somewhere else. So to make a long story short, when, on the way back home from looking at this house, when the boys were little guys, and we had that Lincoln, old big Lincoln. They were, the Lord said, "Stop looking for a house. Somebody's going to call you. They're going to have a house for you and a job for your wife." Heard that, and so that was on a Sunday. Well, that Friday, that Sabbath morning, about 5:30 in the morning, Lorraine woke me up. Preparing for church and stuff, or getting ready to get up in soon. And she said, "You ain't gonna believe this." She said, "So and so called from Alabama." And he said he was an elder. He said, and he couldn't sleep from Sunday until Friday. He was being bombarded by the Lord, troubled by the Lord about me and my wife. So he was trying to fight what he heard because he knew I was like a, what you call it. I was, a little radical, spirit filled man, and they were more conservative. Anyway, that Friday, Saturday, Sabbath morning, he called and told her that he couldn't sleep, and he had to let her know he had a job for her and a house for us in Alabama. So that was my answer. And the guy didn't never like me, so I knew that was God because he made him walk the floor for 7 nights and then call us and tell us he had a place. And so I came to church that morning. I told people that, it's time for us to go. And I'm going to ordain John right now as pastor. I ain't got to go through all that formality. I know what the Lord told me. So they were looking at me like I was crazy, some of the people. Because I was telling y'all I got ready to go. So we didn't know we were going, who was going. But when the call came, it had to be God. We got down. So I was in the transition. I was crying to the Lord. I said, what am I going to do? What apostle, what's that? And, I'm leaving these people, this is all I know, and he told me to keep quiet. So on the way down, we got our stuff together. We moved out. On the way down, I cried for 16 hours about. I was driving a U-Haul. She was driving a Lincoln. The boys would switch off, one with me, then with him, and we'd stop and get some gas. But, I had tears because I was wondering, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? He said, when you get there, it'll open up in you. So when I got down to Huntsville, Alabama, I met people. And I went to a service. I met a lady at a Christian bookstore, and I dropped word on her and 3 other girls. And we went outside and they were crying. We were praying together, and they got my number. And I ended up going to a couple of services that these people had. And next thing I know, they wanted me to open up my ministry. So when I opened up in a place called on Oakwood Avenue, Solid Tabernacle had this big conference hall. When I opened up the first one I had, there was about 900 people there, and I began to drop word. And so from there. So I knew that the apostolic was on me. Everywhere I went, they knew who I was. So I wasn't really going to a lot of Sabbath. We went to Sabbath churches, but I was going to Sunday services, and they knew who I was. They would call me up out of nowhere. They didn't even never saw me before and let me, give a word, or call me up into the front, let me preach in their churches. And it was crazy. So then it began to, grow in me. And I began to understand it as I walked in it. But, the hardest, most difficult thing was letting people coming back to visit, because, I felt I had let the people down. You always feel like, when you're called to move into another area, you feel like you're leaving something behind that you want to hold on to. So anyway, when I put John in position, some people said he couldn't do it. I said, let me tell you something. I know who he is. I know he can handle it. So I was told by certain people in the church that, I said, he's going to be fine. I have no doubt about that, because when I saw him go through my door, I knew he said he was the one. So you can't tell me when I can hear, see. So basically I did that, and so that's how it started with him and I. But I always knew something about him, it was something about him when he came through my door. I knew he said he's the one. And see, when you can hear, when you're built to hear, you can hear. So that's how that got to fruition, and I knew that he would carry the ball. Because I knew what God told me, but I knew his character and integrity was intact. I knew who he was. And I saw his transition from LaTroy to meet Naila, and then the rest was history. So, it's just a wonderful thing. He told me that we were going to be like a 5-fold ministry, that it would be, different from, Adventists in that way, because of the gifts of the Spirit would be allowed to operate. And, so that was what I started to do, and we started to teach and train, and we'd have services, like we had studies at Pastor Judy's house or my house, and from there, things began to open up, So basically, I just did what I was told to do, and I would teach and train as the Lord gave it to me. We'd have our Bible studies, we'd have our services, and it started to grow. Then we got from that old building on Market Street. We looked for. I got a building over there, which is now the church, 302 Madison Run, which was used to be a deli down there. A deli, a little store, like like a fast food place. They had food in there, soda stuff for people to buy. And when I looked at the building, the man who his name was Richie, I forgot him. He told me that the man wanted to sell the building. He didn't want to rent it out. So when I got in the building myself, and Bishop Jervy, and your grandmother, Mother Cindy, and a few other people, we came in there. We came to prayer. Said, "This is our building." So the man who was the realtor, he called me back and said the man would let us, if we could put down like $5,000, something like that, $5,000, they would let us rent the building out and get for $1,000 a month. So I got back home to my aunt in New Jersey, where I'm at now, and she gave me the money, and Elder Bernard, he dropped $2,000 on me, and so we got, we gave the man the down payment, and from there we started the ministry. So it opened up. We had the old building. We started working from there, and everything else. So to be honest with you, it was all the hand of God. Then we had people come on board, Sister Justice, we came on board, Peggy Palmer, Sister Palmer, Prophetess Palmer, then, and Chuck came back from, he was in Maryland at the time, Pastor Chuck. And then, it just formed so crazy that, it just began to be, people who were stone staunch Adventists would come, and everything started to build from there. So it's like, he put his hands on everything, and then he sent people to me, Elder Bernard, and, Elder Earl Drayton, Chuck came back, then, I met, then Loretta came in, she became our treasurer, Sister Loretta, then I told her you were an evangelist, but so I started talking to her about different things. So everything formed, that way. Mom Jervy, Pop came on board. So everything began to pull itself together, once we got to the old building. A lot of other people came in, God bless Elder Leo came later on, Sister Cece who also passed away. So it was like that. Met Mother Justice, it was crazy. Mother Morgan would come in, Mother Jervy's friend. We had other people coming from different churches would come to visit. So that's how it really started. That's how it formed into that. So now looking ahead, it was always a vision to be a fivefold type with a flow. Where you could allow the Spirit, because I was raised in, I was born into Catholicism. I was going to church every Sunday, to Catholic churches. Then I went from there, to Episcopalian, then from there, to Baptist, and from there, it matriculated to that. So, it began to open up, and the Lord told me to make sure I kept it, and they asked me to join. They wanted me to basically bring in Mount Carmel as an Adventist church, but I refused it. They won't give me a salary, put me under the umbrella, but I refused to do that. Because the Lord told me to do it the way He gave it to me, So I did the way He told it to me. So that's how it got to that. Then they began to come against me. People came to come against me for starting out, this independent, so Sabbath church. But it wasn't never to be an Adventist church. It was called to be a Seventh-day Deliverance church, a church that caused, brought deliverance and, spoke the word of God, allowed healing and deliverance. So I always had that in me. It just opened up in me as I began to walk in it. So people understand this. You need to be able to, when you have something in you, if you just begin to walk and take the brakes off and, and stop pumping the brakes, and you let it will open up within you. And that's what happened for me, with how this got. But now looking forward today, I'm amazed, because my job was to do what I did. And I didn't understand what an overseer was until I walked in it. And see, I felt like I had let the church down because I had to leave, but I knew that it was in good hands. So everything began to build when it happened that way. But I'm saying the thing about when you obey God, something when you hear His voice, the Bible says to harden not your heart. So I did what I was told to do. So I can look forward now. And some things that I went through were painful. Doesn't mean you have to like what you're told to do. You have to do what you're told. You look at Noah, you look at Moses, look at all the men and women of God that have had strong things to do. They sometimes tried to run from it. They were afraid of it because it's so vast and so profound that it doesn't make sense, because you look at yourself and say, how can I do these things? But it never was me. It was the Spirit of God in me. So I look forward now. And 30 years later, it's better than it was, so much better now, because your father, he's a man of honor, but he has administrative gifts that I don't possess that like that. So he was able to put everything together and form it because he had a background in that area, business. And so he used it for business side. Also, he had the Spirit of God. So it's amazing because it's what it is today. I'm overwhelmed. The Bible says, joy unspeakable and full of glory. Well, that's what it is for me. And as I'm approaching this event, I'm overwhelmed by it, because I didn't never start out with the intent to do any of these things. It's to do what I was told. And see, when you obey God, you find out later on, you look back. Hindsight is always 20/20, but I look at it now and see, so everything that I went through, all the hurt and the pain, all the sufferings, it was well worth all the scars. If you have no scars, no battle wounds, you're not His. He had scars, He had wounds. The Lord dealt through all of that. He was rejected, He was left despised among men. You go through all that in ministry. You deal with those aspects every day in your life, and sometimes they come and they go. But the thing was, I knew what He told me. So it came to that. So, like I can say, I'm looking at today, I'm thankful because when I come to the house of God, come to visit, like it's not as much as it used to be, I'm thankful because I see that the labor was not in vain. So what He put together, when you hand the ball to someone, you get out the way. So I said, I'm just going to watch over you, but you got to handle it the way he give it to you. And that's how that started. I would tell the people that basically Spirit and Truth is a ministry that is was founded by the Lord. The Bible says, except the Lord build a house, they that labor in vain. Except the Lord keep a watch, he that watcheth in vain. So the Lord built it. Then, I remember Gamaliel saying when they were talking about Jesus, they were preaching his name in the synagogues, Peter and John and Paul. He said, leave it alone. He was a rabbi. He was a scholar, and he told them leave it alone, because if it's of God, you can't stop it. If it ain't of God, it won't come to nothing. So the proof and the pudding is that it's still existing, and everything that was done in the way it's been done, it has to be the hand of God, because it could not exist unless it is God. So basically, Yahweh God. So that's how. If future generations, I would tell you, if you're looking for a place where there's freedom to be who you are, where there's freedom to allow your gifts to matriculate and open up within you, but in a decent and orderly way. You want to be understand the Sabbath and understand how to be free in the Sabbath, then that's the place to come to, because there's an opening there for freedom to be exposed. So it's that where you have the Spirit moving, where you can allow things to open up, not no set formula. It just, the Lord has, of course, you have a program you set up, but it comes to a place where the Spirit moves freely in there, and that's what it was made to be from the beginning. I didn't understand it, but I understand it now. But I look back and I say to you that anyone who's looking for a good place to come to, Spirit and Truth is the place to come. If you're a Sabbath keeper, you want some freedom, you want to be able to preach and teach, but also and be decent and in order, because they don't play and there's no foolishness allowed in there, garbage to go come around. They cut it off at the head, the snake at the head. But if that's the place to come and get to be free, a lot of people that are caught up in the Sabbath are caught up in this rigidity of it, this staunchiness, this staleness of it, because they don't want to be free. They have this certain rigid rules and regulations. They don't believe in the Spirit sometimes. They don't believe in this and that. But this is a place where the Spirit is able to move, and have His way. And the men of God that are in there, the women of God that are there, they are free in the Spirit. And that's what I would say to anyone trying to find a place that's looking for a home. Not trying to recruit anybody. If the Lord don't send you, you ain't gonna last anyway. But the thing about it, if you're looking for a place where you can come and get dig in and become a part of something that's great and that's going to even expand even yet more, then Spirit and Truth is the place to come. Okay, well, I can tell you this. My main thing with people that are preachers and have been given this, this unction from the Lord to preach and teach and do, is for character and integrity to be intact. So that's one of the legacies I want to leave behind them that the church has, where there's character and integrity. Because it don't matter how they preach, how they prophesy, or what is their life like. Who are they? How do they operate? And also, he said, we always be able to show proof of that ministry and the hope that's within thee. And see, when you've been chosen by God to do the work, you got to remember that you're under His command. So you have to make sure that you listen to Him, but also you got to understand the leadership that you're under. And see, a lot of people they want to run with it and go ahead of the people that are given the charge. And see, then they come into trouble because there's a protocol with God. There's a pecking order with the Lord. And so you got to stay in that line. And so you come against what belongs to Him. That's why the Bible says, rebuke not an elder. So you got people come out with this stuff, but the legacy is that there's something live there. You'll be begotten again in 1 Peter with a lively hope, a living hope. That fadeth not away, who are kept by the power of God until the day of salvation. So the power of God is operating within it. The legacy is that God is in charge of that. Now, yeah, we're under shepherds. He's the angel of the house, but there's an order with God. And legacy is that you leave something that's living, that's alive. A lot of churches are dead. I'm not calling no names. A lot of churches they just Ichabod, he departed because they're trying to be so rigid and so boxed in that you don't allow the Spirit to move. And allow the Spirit of God, the Holy Ghost to move in the house. He will have His way, and He'll also begin to open up situations and things that else can but Him. Because He's not in charge, God is He just to submit to Him. It's no longer I, but Christ within. So the legacy is that it's a Christian field organization, but it's a fivefold, and it's a ministry that has a lot of power in it. And if you come there with you need to, you will get delivered. See, if people don't understand, deliverance ministry means when they come in, whatever they got on them, it's going to get off of them. And so the legacy is that this is a viable, it's flexible, it's pliable, it's movable, but it's in order. And that's why you have people there and certain not there, because some people want to have it their way and not God's way. Like I say, Gamaliel said, if it's going to be some God, it won't come. You can't stop it. If it's not of him, it won't come to nothing. So the legacy for me is that there's something here that I can be proud of. Not that I did anything but just obey him, but I look back over those 30 years and I know that more joy now, more peace now, because I understand that it was always meant to be this way. But when you're going through something, when he tells you do this or do that, the Lord, sometimes you don't understand. You see the beginning and the end, but you never see the in-betweens. So the in-betweens, when you're going through and dealing with all these different things, what builds you. That's what builds your faith and your integrity is your trials and tribulations. They they sharpen your faith and your belief in him. That's what it's never meant to destroy anybody. It's only meant to build you up in your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Ghost. So what happens with us is that, we look back as men of God. See, and here's the thing, I'll let you know, I'll close this out. I never intended for any of this to be what it is. I was doing what I was told to do. And I'm excited because what it is and the way it is, I'm overjoyed because it's there and it's still living. From the old building there's gonna be another building. It's up now. So it's something that I behold my eyes, and I've seen it from the beginning to now. So the joy that I have in me is because they're carrying the work on. And those men and women in there, y'all are men and women of God. And y'all have good character. Y'all have good your integrity's upright. Y'all are before the Lord. We all got our shortcomings, but I know what's in y'all. And see, because I'm a father to most of the people there and grandfather, I know what's in the house. So my joy is that it is what it is. And that there's going to be even yet more blessings coming for the ministry because it's being done the right way. If it ain't God, it won't last. If it is God, you can't stop it. So it is the Lord. And see, because of that, I'm thankful. And see, so everything, all the hell, all the stuff I went through, it was well worth it to see where it is now. So my joy, so everything that what I was heard about, it's been gone. I've been healed. There's still a balm in Gilead. The balm, I've been healed, but also seeing this come to fruition, I'm overjoyed, overwhelmed. I'm also, I'm humbled by it because it's something that, I never dreamed of. But I'm thankful that me and my wife are being honored because we just did what we were told to do. So people forget you sometimes, but thank God, we are not forgotten. And sometimes the enemy wants to make you feel, woman of God, that, nobody cares, that nobody understands. But I thank God that I don't have that feeling in me anymore. I never had it for a little bit when I was younger, but now it's been completely gone. So seeing what you're doing, I can stick my chest out. I don't have my hand in like I used to, but I still pray over everybody in the house every day. So I'm saying to you that, I'm thankful for what I've seen. And I knew it all. No, I didn't know it. I just did what I was told to do. Just do what you're told. And I'll get this to you as I close. When you're given something, you just do what you're told. You just walk in what you got. And if you're walking what it is, it will overtake you. Because before he put you in your mama's womb, he birthed you into those things. He put those things in you. So that's what you can't produce nothing you're not a product of. Apple tree produce apples, orange tree, oranges, pear tree, pears. What's in you gonna come out of you. But what's in this ministry and in this place is the freedom to be in God and God be in you. And also to flow in the gifts of the Spirit and be taught and trained in a way that you would understand the word from A to Z.